This is going to be my final video for today, and this was my final literature module that I took for this year. It was called Consuming Fictions, Food and Appetite in Victorian Culture. I really enjoyed this module. We looked at a variety of texts. We looked at Dracula. We looked at one of the Bronte sisters' novels. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which I really enjoyed, although that, as our lecturer sort of explained, that's technically pre-Victorian era, but it kind of encompasses a lot of the sort of Victorian values, which is why it was included, because it kind of shows the beginning of this movement that kind of carries on through the Victorian era, like the temperance movement, where they were trying to get everyone, or the moralists, where they were trying to get people to basically abstain from alcohol and drink. And it was a really enjoyable module. We also looked at Alice in Wonderland. I personally don't really like Alice in Wonderland. It's never been a particular favourite of mine. But under the lens of looking at food and appetite, it was really interesting. And what was it about Alice in Wonderland? There was a point. Alice in Wonderland. Oh, and we looked at like the idea of with Alice in Wonderland, which I sort of noticed reading through it, kind of how she's almost like a colonist, and she kind of goes into Wonderland and expects everyone to conform to her etiquette rules and the way she's been raised, and how she tries, like all the residents of Wonderland, she's like a mini dictator trying to go along and change their sort of ways, and it's very satirical in its nature. It's making fun of essentially all the stuffy rules and all the ridiculous things that middle class and upper class Victorians had to abide by for their social status. I'm trying to have a quick look around to see if there's any other books that I still have out that I notice for this module. Oliver Twist and Mrs. Beeton's book of household management. It was really interesting. I hear football people yelling. They sound drunk. Ironic. Kind of one of the assignments. So the first assignment was like a close reading exercise, and I kind of massively messed it up. I managed to get a 65, so a mid 2-1. I was kind of disappointed with that, but I also kind of I guessed what grade I was going to get. I was like, yeah, I bet that's going to get a 65. Because I decided to go for, we had a choice of extracts we could pick to do our close reading exercise, and I loved Goblin Market, which was one of the narrative poems of Christina Rossetti that we got to study, and I love poetry, and I love Christina Rossetti's poem, Goblin Market. But I think my analytical brain went a little bit into overdrive, and some of the kind of points that I was attempting to make, I didn't necessarily execute well, and because it was a very limited word count, I didn't really do myself justice. I didn't necessarily agree with all of the comments. Like, some of the points I made, I thought they did have validity from the text, like I was trying to take everything I was saying from my particular part of the poem, but I just didn't really execute it that well, and some of my points my brain went into overdrive, and they were a bit too speculative, so they weren't convincing enough, they weren't grounded enough within the text, even though I thought they were there. It was just my brain being a bit like, my brain was pushing it, basically. It's when you try to push a point that you feel strongly about, but it's not really there. So it was a shame, because I really loved that poem, and I didn't really do myself justice in that particular area. I think I was also, once again, I fell into my trap, which I usually do every single year. There's always at least one essay where I fall into the trap of trying to do too much, and this was that essay. I was trying to do too much. But the second assignment, I really, in all honesty, couldn't be bothered to do, which is very rare for me, because I love writing an essay. yes, they're stressful, but I do enjoy the process. I ended up thinking, because dissertation just consumes your entire soul and life. I was like, there is no way I'm going to want to write a comparative essay. Like, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this module. I found it fascinating, the debates we had, the discussions, although actually that was a thing. The peers in my group, apart from a few, they really didn't engage well at all with this module. So it was a very disheartening module to take, because there was just silence, cricket chirping, and I was just like, it was just very painful. Because it was really interesting, the actual content of it. And one of my favourite things was the opening week, where we looked at like the old advertisements. I love Victorian advertisements. And we sort of analysed them, and there was a lot of slave narrative as well that we kind of encompass and discuss, which is really important. And like one of them, like with the coconuts, and they're these like anthropomorphic monkeys, which is very racist by our standards today, and kind of like the exoticness and the other, and like, because they start bringing back desiccated coconut to decorate their cakes with, and they're not actually thinking about the horrific plantations, and obviously sugar, and how food is coded, and all the theories and everything surrounding food is just fascinating, and I loved it. But in terms of the actual text, I did enjoy most of the text. Cranford was another text that we had to read. I couldn't quite finish it. I really didn't get on with Cranford, but when it got to the second assignment, the questions themselves, I can't even remember what the questions were now, but once again, we always get like a multiple choice of what assignment question we want to answer, but none of them excited me enough to write an essay on them. So basically, it wasn't just a lack of, I couldn't be bothered because of my dissertation, it was none of these are inspiring me, none of these questions or texts are just like, none of these questions are just igniting that passion in me. So I thought, no. But there was, for the first time, which was very fortunate for me, a creative option was offered, which I took and I really enjoyed. I got a 68, which I felt much happier with. And I designed my own cookery book, Victorian cookery book. And I had my lovely girlfriend illustrate some like Victorian style, because she's really good at drawing. I got her to illustrate some Victorian style things for the recipes. And yeah, I just made my own fictional author and wrote an introduction to a cookery book, but with a focus on food adulteration. And then the other side of that was the critical essay, reflective commentary, sort of justifying your choices and stuff. And I did a lot of research for this creative writing project, and I really enjoyed it. So that was kind of consuming fictions in a nutshell, really. I did really enjoy it, and I find food and drink fascinating in literature. I mean, it holds so much meaning, and how we come to have these different coded messages for food, and especially the sort of theories surrounding female appetite at the time as well, in particular, are really interesting, and also male appetite, because you kind of get the whole, prior to the Victorian era, you very much have like the rakes and the rake culture of Regency Britain, and how they're expected to overindulge, they're expected to drink lots of copious amount of alcohol, and they're meant to like go out and party and just overindulge in their appetites. And obviously you had King George, King George the Fourth, who obviously had a lot of weight issues because he would just overindulge on everything. So it was just really fascinating, and it was really enjoyable. But if I had to pick one or the other, I definitely valued Holocaust literatures more. Not to say that I didn't value consuming fictions, but Holocaust literatures was just, it was probably out of my entire experience of university, I would say Holocaust literatures all the way was like the best literature module for me. Or it was up there. No, it was the best literature module for me. And I did enjoy consuming fictions, but I think comparing the sort of levels of discussion and the fact that more people seem to engage and be really inspired to debate in Holocaust literature, sadly there wasn't really much of that in consuming fictions, which made it very disheartening, very slow. And yeah, and obviously with the pandemic and everything going on as well, all of this was done online, like literally from towards the end of my second year to my third and final year, the majority of my university experience ended up being online, which was really sad in a way. I think some people must prefer being in that kind of classroom environment and seeing people face to face. That was another thing I noticed, like lots of people didn't put on their cameras and stuff, which was a shame because all our lecturers could see. Well, I had my camera on because I'm that nerdy student who will just do that. And also I think it's rude if you don't. But there were just a lot of people who didn't have their cameras on, and it's just kind of like disconcerting, and it's probably really difficult for our lecturers as well to see who's talking, so it's all just a mess, really. But it was what it was, and I'm glad. Well, I'm glad I'm done now. I have one grade that I'm waiting on. I'm waiting on my big dissertation. I'm waiting on getting that grade back, which should be on the 21st of this month, 21st of June. And I really hope that I've done well, but I'm planning on making a more structured. These are more just informal, chatty, basically verbal vomit videos. I will probably do some minor editing on these because it's a mess, but I'm planning on doing a much more structured, thoughtful dissertation video because I really want to try and help future students, because I was very nervous doing my dissertation. I was petrified. I didn't know if I had it in me. I had emotional breakdowns. Like, you hear horror stories, and the horror stories are real. Like, I saw so many videos of other literature students go through it and people cry, and I thought, no, that won't be me. No, it definitely was me. I cried. I admit that. I cried. It's so stressful. It was worth it, but it was stressful. So I feel like I want to make a dedicated video for that. Anyway, if anyone's watched this, thank you. Good luck with whatever it is you're doing, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye.